Stretch those legs, top off your iced tea or hot tea or whatever beverage, and maybe do a few cartwheels, as Brian Parsons is wont to say. And we will be back. Y'all enjoy. This is Paranormal Experienced with my guest, Kyl Cobb, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Old Edwards Inn and Spa in downtown Highlands, North Carolina, the go-to getaway for couples. The Winter Slip Away and Save package gives you 2 blissful nights with spa treatments and dinner. More information at oldedwardsinn.com.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. Protesters gathered today outside the Alabama Attorney General's office. As Troy Public Radio's Kyle Gassett reports, the family of a man killed in a Birmingham mall on Thanksgiving is protesting a report exonerating the police officer who shot him.
No justice! No peace!
After protesters marched to the door of Attorney General Steve Marshall's office, Emantic Bradford Sr., the father of the victim, Emantic Bradford Jr., spoke openly about his pain.
My son is gone. Do you understand the feeling that I have every night when I lay down at night and the memories I got of my child when he was young and as he got older? You don't feel my pain.
Marshall's report concludes the officer who killed Bradford acted properly because Bradford was holding a gun moments after a holiday shooting left 2 people injured. Bradford's family vows to hold future protests at Marshall's home and office. For NPR News, I'm Kyle Gassett in Montgomery.
New York State's Attorney General is seeking to change state law to prevent employers from retaliating against workers by threatening to report them to immigration authorities. Current state law bars employers from firing, threatening, penalizing, or otherwise discriminating against workers who report or blow the whistle on wage violations. Proposed change would expand the definition of retaliatory conduct to include threats regarding a person's immigration status. Proposal comes after a maid at one of President Trump's golf properties in New Jersey said a supervisor threatened her with deportation if she complained about working conditions. The House Judiciary Committee held its first hearing on gun violence in more than 8 years. It's the product of a newly Democratic-controlled House, which is making gun violence an issue. But the commotion that broke out during the hearing illustrates just how far apart the two sides are on the matter. NPR's Tim Mack has more from Capitol Hill.
House Democrats are coalescing around H.R. 8, which provides for universal firearms background checks. Then Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, an ally of President Trump, weighed in.
H.R. 8 would not have stopped many of the circumstances I raised, but a wall, a barrier on the southern border may have, and that's what we're fighting for.
After being interrupted by those protests, Gaetz then tried to get the 2 audience members, both fathers of Parkland shooting victims, tossed from the committee room. It's a reflection of how vociferous the debate around guns is and will be in this Congress. Tim Mack, NPR News, Washington.
According to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, there are no plans yet for a meeting between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping to talk about a possible trade deal. While representatives from the 2 countries have been talking, Trump has said there'll be no deal until the 2 leaders agree to meet. Stocks lost ground on Wall Street today. The Dow dropped 21 points to 25,390. The Nasdaq was down 26 points. You're listening to NPR. British Prime Minister Theresa May heads back to Brussels tomorrow to make another pitch for renegotiating Brexit. The EU divorce is scheduled for March 29th, but the British Parliament has yet to approve an exit strategy, prompting the head of the European Union to rail against prominent Brexit backers. Here's NPR's Frank Langfitt.
European Council President Donald Tusk spoke during a press conference with Irish Premier Leo Varadkar in Brussels.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely.
Tusk was referring to Brexiteers who predicted leaving the EU would be easy. In fact, it's plunged the UK into its worst political chaos in decades. UK House of Commons leader Andrea Leadsom, who backed Brexit, said Tusk should apologize for his, quote, disgraceful and spiteful comments. Frank Langfitt, NPR News, London.
Some elected officials in an Arizona border city are up in arms over new razor wire fencing they say has been installed on some border fence running through the downtown. The city of Nogales, Arizona, which sits on the Mexican border, said to be contemplating a proclamation that would condemn the use of concertina wire. The The vote comes after U.S. military troops installed additional layers of wire along the fence over the weekend, and a day after President Trump's focus on border security during his State of the Union address. Crude oil futures prices closed modestly higher today. The price of oil was up 35 cents a barrel to end the session at $54.01 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. And you are back with Paranormal Experience Radio. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and my guest tonight is Kyl Cobb. We have been having some very interesting discussions. You've actually studied, what was it, 26 religions, 22 religions?
22 religions.
And so you've got vast knowledge on different methodologies to handle things of different natures. And Carl in chat, we were talking about your family not your family, the family that you were aiding, who were having an issue with a demon who actually tracked them through its contact, I guess, with the child. Carl wanted to know, what tools do you use to rid demons? Because you were able to help them on that second visit.
Well, first and foremost, I do try to respect the religious tradition of whoever the potential client is. And when I say client, one thing I just want to make clear, no legitimate person in our field ever charges anybody anything.
I love the reasons that you listed for that.
Yeah. Well, it's a service and a devotion. And so first and foremost, when I say clients, I mean only to the extent that these are people that I am working to help. There's no money that's ever exchanged. Going a little bit further into the explanation that answer the question, I always try to respect the client's religious beliefs. Sometimes things don't work the way you expect. There's a different concept of what demons are in the East and what demons are in the West. If you take the origin as the Epic of Gilgamesh as the center, as you move further to the West, you get the Jewish traditions laid on top. You get, first going backing up, you get the Sumerian, you get the Jewish traditions, you get the Christian traditions. In the Christian tradition, the belief is that divinity is intangible. You can't kill an angel, so to speak. You can't kill a demon. And Christ, for instance, when he casts the demons out, he doesn't kill the demons. He simply removes them from their host. And so the Catholic Church created what we now call the exorcism, which literally means to command. Exequizo is actually the real word for an exorcism, as we would understand it, which means actually to cast out. But so the West doesn't believe you can hurt a demon. You can command it to leave in the name of God, basically, and it most of the time hopefully will respond. In the East, though, they believe that the demons, the concept of demons that started out in Mesopotamia gets overlaid with Buddhism, with Hindi philosophies, with shamanism. And what's true about almost all of those religions is they believe that what we consider a demon has a physical body. You just can't see it. So because of that difference in philosophy, they've developed a set of weapons. They're called different names depending on what area you're in. The two most popular names for them are the Kyla, that's K-I-L-A, or a Phurba, that's P-H-U-R-B-A. And these are pegs, if you take it from the most literal sense, used to bind the demon or the god, even from their perspective, to the earth to destroy it. And these weapons, they've been used for literally thousands of years. So I have actually a collection of Phurbas. The oldest one goes back about 500 years. And as I get into a situation, I will always carry a Phurba with me. I was talking to you earlier off air, And I mentioned I got lucky in that I got one of the furbas that was auctioned in the 70s at Sotheby's as one of the most cursed items on the planet. And that's what I refer to, quote unquote, as the big gun.
Yes.
No one other than me is allowed to touch it just because of the negative consequences. And I have found that even if I take it in that particular one, even into a haunted location, that the haunted location activity stops. So for most cases, it stays in the car. It never comes out. But I have had to use it in cases where there is activity that is, I refer to it as agitated. Sometimes it's not, most of the time it's not a demonic. It's just an agitated spirit. But you generally, even just walking into a location with something like that, kind of, I won't use the term cleanses. It discourages whatever was there causing trouble. When we talk about demonics, for the most part, I frequently describe them as like mosquitoes. They prey on the easy food. They don't want someone to know they're there. They don't want something to resist them. And so the more you swat at them, the more likely they are to leave, which is what a Catholic exorcism is too. You're making it uncomfortable enough. You're reinforcing the victim, so to speak's mental strength and belief to resist the demonic that you're encountering. Same is true with the Eastern concept, only you're being a little bit more aggressive. If you follow the Eastern tradition of that they have physical bodies, one of the beliefs is that these Kylas or furbas actually can cause injury to them and kill them in theory. So that's one of the tools I use at my disposal. But like I mentioned earlier, the Catholic exorcism ritual. I am not an exorcist. Let me underline that statement. I am not an exorcist. I advise and assist people who are in that position that need help. One of the number one class of people who contact me for help is clergy of different denominations and different beliefs. I guess the number two are paranormal teams that don't know what to do because they found themselves in an awkward position. And I get about 200 inquiries a month from all over the world, emails, Facebooks, calls. I mean, it never stops. And I do my best to triage them. I'm really lucky that I've, over the years, met some really good people and teams all over the world that when I get a call, if it seems legit and past the screening, I often can refer it to a local team to go hit the ground, try to validate it, and if there is a legitimate issue, then get more involved.
Well, as I said, you're already my choice for backup if I run into that situation. I've been very fortunate not to. There have been times that I wondered, but I really, truly believe, and correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't experienced it yet. When what you're coming across is demonic, right?
Not always. Some of them are very clever. One of my biggest failure cases involved a demonic that was pretending to be an apparition of a little girl, but none of the usual things that would have tipped the scales quickly worked, because it happened to be that the clients that it was after, the townhouse that they were living in had been an old people's home at one point, but their particular townhouse is where the trunk of the electric for the entire building came in. And so their flat, or their townhouse itself, was constantly charged with electric. A health hazard indeed, but the demonic used that to mask itself, but it gave itself away in the physical abilities. They had a hemp and seashell wind chime that was like on a breakfast nook, and it would take it in and it would twist it all up and then let it spin down. There was a ficus tree, and you could say, "Are you here?" And it would shake it. doors slammed and would hold and you couldn't get through them, objects thrown.